it is one of these grand questions that faces the future generations of how do we grow healthy food for ourselves? How do we fend off the byproduct or the side effect of what we've done to this point? And how do we hopefully sustain, planet Earth and those practices and the plant communities that we depend on?
Hello, plant people. Hello, my herbal friends, and welcome to another edition of Everything You Did Not Know About Herbalism here on Herbal Radio, brought to you, of course, by Mountain Rose Herbs. And I'm going to go way out on a limb here. I think Mountain Rose Herbs may offer the greatest selection of organic botanical products in the world. I just saying it. It might be true. I'm maybe a little biased, but no, honestly, I don't think there's any competition out there. So I'm your host, Tommy Navarre, and I am so excited to be here. I am well, let me start off by saying we have Ryan Neal on the show today, and he is from Mirai Bonsai. He is Mirai Bonsai, baby. He is considered the greatest bonsai artist in the world, and I am a bonsai nerd. But for all you listening who think, well, what does that have to do with herbalism? That's not exactly what we talk about, although we do kind of hit on it a little bit, and I'm pretty excited about that. But actually, I wanted to talk to him about something that's near and dear to us here at Mountain Rose Herbs, which is the olive tree and his work in saving the Puglia olives in Italy. And so if you are, and I'm pretty certain that you probably are if you're listening to this show, if you're a plant nerd, if you're a tree nerd, this is the show for you, because this guy is an absolute expert on trees, and his plant knowledge it's amazing. He's really incredible, and I encourage everyone listening, go to Mirai Bonsai, check out his artwork. It was life-changing for me. I got to see it in person. It was one of those moments in my life where I realized, oh, this is real art, and art needs to be, searched out, and you need to go find it. And when you find it, there's nothing like it. So, yeah. So I'm excited about the show today. And I'm here, and I say that because I had a pretty hard week. Mentally, this is maybe as hard as it's ever been for me. I don't know why. Saturday was fantastic. Had a wonderful day, kind of in the art world, and doing that, and it was just wonderful. And then Sunday I woke up, and I don't know, it was like getting punched in the face. So I talk about it on the show. I'm open about it. I do suffer from bipolarism, and I do have bouts of depression. And sometimes they can come out of nowhere. And Sunday was one of those times. So I spent Monday, Tuesday pretty hunkered down. I kind of just got into physically into bed, really, and I just kind of stayed there. I was able to do some work, which is always good for me. Because it kind of grounds me a little bit. I'm able to take my mind off of whatever it is my mind has decided that we need to be incredibly anxious about or incredibly depressed about. That was tough. It was really, really difficult. And my therapist, who I've been seeing for quite a few years, had to go on a leave of absence, and so I think that's part of it as well. I feel like that's I don't have that resource right now. So it was a lot of searching out. I'm so happy that I have a support group around me that I can call on in those times, and we've talked about it many times on this show, that we need community and how important it is to have community. And this is one of those times that I was so thankful that I did have community. And I also had my herbal support as well. I was able to get some teas, and I had a lot of skullcap and some different mint always does well for me. I'm not sure why, but I love just drinking mint tea. And it was on this show that I was able to kind of learn a lot about those herbal allies that you can rely on in these, when this happens to you. So that was really wonderful. I was able to, kind of take what I've learned from the show and apply it. And it really did help me through a pretty hard week. But I feel like I'm on the other side of it now. I feel pretty good. I feel a lot healthier today. This is Friday, so I just had to take those. I had to take that time. I had to have that amount of space, and I have a lovely, an amazing, and incredible wife who understands me, who has always stood by me, who knows who I am, and is able to take care of me in those situations. And so, um, I don't know what I would do without her. And again, it's having that support network around you. So I'm hoping people that are listening, just know that you're not alone out there. And if you're going through something, please seek help. And please try to take care of yourself. Give yourself the space to heal. Give yourself the space to have a better understanding of what's going on, and that you will come out on the other side of it. And that sometimes this happens, but it's okay, because we're human, and we need to not shame ourselves, and we need to forgive ourselves, and and we need to take care of ourselves. So please do that. Anyway, I thought I would say that. I felt like I really wanted to just to let people know, only because again, the importance of community, the importance of having that support group around you, and also the importance of your herbal allies. So everyone out there who's struggling, hang in there. It's going to get better, I promise. So very excited about this show. This is going to be great. This is me having a fantastic conversation with Ryan Neal.
I grew up in a little town in western Colorado called Glenwood Springs, right near Aspen, and my family was in the Roaring Fork River Valley originally because my grandfather, my dad's dad, was a ranch hand for a rancher that put up a lot of hay and a lot of livestock.
Mm-hmm.
And he would run cattle in the high country grazing grounds over the summertime, like be gone for like 2 or 3 months, moving cattle through all of the grazing pastures.
Wow.
Yeah. So my dad grew up in this super remote part of Colorado that was like 3 or 4 hours from the nearest tiny town, which at that time and still is Glenwood Springs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Derby Mesa is like at the top of it's like a plateau in the foothills of the Rockies, where there's a lot of water. And it's beautiful. It's like if I had to, create an image of heaven, that would be what it looks like. It is really special. And so they moved into town when my dad was entering high school. His mom taught at a one-room schoolhouse that had like kindergarten through 8th grade. And his dad was a ranch hand. So my dad grew up working on a ranch, and then they moved into town for my dad to go to high school.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, my grandfather bought a gas station. And right across the street from my grandfather's gas station, my mom's dad also bought a gas station. And my mom would come in the summers from Arizona to stay with her dad in Colorado. And that's how my dad and mom met. Anyways, it's like an ag-based Romeo and Juliet, right? Like they
had to have like a
secret
a secret relationship. Yes. Like, how dare you go out with our competitor?
Exactly. Across the street gas station. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Actually, the Italian restaurant that I grew up working in, all of the 3 Italian brothers of the Italian underground, the Durrett brothers, worked for my grandpa at his gas station. My grandpa was in World War II. He was on Angio Beach on D-Day. He was one of a very few people that survived.
Wow.
And so he was pretty like hard-nosed rancher, World War II vet, saw a lot of things. And so the Durrett brothers were these like uh, infamous brothers in town that got into a lot of trouble, ended up working for my grandpa. My grandpa, gave them work ethic, probably some discipline, a lot of profane words probably involved in all that.
Mhm.
Anyways, I ended up working for the Durrett brothers in their restaurant. So they treated me with the same rigor and intensity as my grandpa had treated them. And I really think the reason that I talk about that is because, first of all, Derby Mesa and the Ponderosa Pines on Derby Mesa were my first concept of a tree, right? I grow bonsai trees for a living. And my passion for trees started in fishing trips up to our family fishing hole on the top of Derby Mesa when I was very, very young. That's my first memory of a tree, first memory of identifying a tree. And why this is so important in terms of my background is, as I've gone to Japan, first went to college in California at Cal Poly to study horticulture with the notion that it was going to make me better at bonsai. I found bonsai when I was 12 at a local county fair. Was introduced to it via the Karate Kid, but I was more interested in the martial arts and Karate Kid. But that's how I found the awareness of bonsai. But really, it was at the county fair.
Well, there's that one special moment, right, in the Karate Kid.
Yeah, it was immaculate conception when I saw everyday people buying a bonsai tree. It helped me realize you didn't have to be Mr. Miyagi or like some Buddhist monk to do bonsai.
Yeah.
So I went to the library, checked out a bunch of books. Anyways, I went to California to study horticulture to be better at bonsai, ultimately. Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, great environmental horticultural science department was smack dab in between the Bay Area and LA, which are the two bonsai meccas, or were the two bonsai meccas in California, and still have, a large Japanese American population that had started to allow Caucasian people to and educate Caucasian people in the post-internment camp World War II era, right? So like a lot of history, there's a lot of stuff tied up in that relationship. And I spent a lot of time in the Bay Area and in Southern California exchanging landscaping labor for any knowledge I could get my hands on. But one of the gentlemen that I spent a lot of time with was Ben Oki, who was the first apprentice to John Naka. John Naka is largely considered the father of American bonsai and one of the sort of founders of bonsai in the Western world outside of Japan. So Ben was his first apprentice, which I'll get to my apprenticeship and the significance of that apprentice-master relationship. But Ben kind of took me in, let me do work with him. He was the curator at the Huntington Library and Botanical Gardens in Pasadena. And I expressed to Ben that I really wanted to study with Masahiko Kimura, my eventual master. And so he said, well, why don't I take you to Japan? Right. After a lot of time spent together where he knew I was serious and he was willing to put his name behind me. So my second year of college, I went to Japan to see the Kokufu exhibition, which happens every February at the Ueno Museum of Art in Tokyo. And in that trip, visited a lot of different bonsai masters' gardens, but specifically and very specially, I visited Masahiko Kimura's garden, the master that I wanted to study with, who's largely regarded as the father of modern bonsai, where he really took the traditional symmetrical sedentary model of bonsai and he literally flipped it upside down. Came up with radical horticultural techniques, incredible engineering feats of modifying the structure of trees, and I would say the most insane aesthetic that's ever been applied to bonsai to really show rugged trees in a new way, used carving tools, manipulated wood, treated the wood more like marble than wood. He wasn't trying to create a natural wood texture. He was trying to create shadow and light, and really looked at like the David as a reference for his sculpture on the trees, which, fast forward 30 or 40 years, there's a lot of dialogue about the trees that are carved by Mr. Kimura now and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But at that time, it was revolutionary to treat a tree as a sculpture, and he was doing it at a level that nobody had ever seen done before. So Ben, said, this kid wants to study with you. And Mr. Kimura kind of laughed, and a lot of things were happening in the Japanese language that I didn't understand. Came back from that, wrote Mr. Kimura a letter a month for 2 years requesting an apprenticeship.
A letter a month.
A letter a month. Yeah. The 23rd letter is when he finally wrote me back, a month before I graduated college.
Yeah.
And it was basically like, stop writing letters. You can come, but don't expect for this to work out or for you to be able to stay. Right.
Yeah.
It was really a cautionary invitation.
Mm-hmm.
So a month after I graduated college in 2004, I sold all my possessions and I moved to Japan with a duffel bag of clothes. And I began a very rigorous 6-year apprenticeship under Masahiko Kimura.
Wow.
So, there's a lot that could be said about that. I'll let you tease those threads apart. But I think one of the things that really sort of connects the dots here is in Mr. Kimura's space where he would have tea with his clients, he had 3 framed pictures. One was of a bristlecone pine, one was of the mountains in Taiwan, and one was of a Puglian olive. And from the moment that I started there, cleaning that space was a part of the apprenticeship duty. After clients would come and drink tea, we would go in and we would clean it up. We would take the dishes to the back of the kitchen. But I was looking at these trees, and Mr. Kimura, anytime he would travel internationally, always asked to be taken to a profound natural spot. And I saw how those trees' influences work, but I was just captivated by how incredible this olive was, right? So coming back to the United States, practicing bonsai, having been exposed to the highest level of technique, horticulture, creativity, of bonsai on a global scale, I wanted to, and from my time as a young man in Colorado, having this experience of these profound natural spaces in the Rockies, my dad and I had started collecting stunted trees out of the wild soon after I found bonsai at 12. Yeah. And I knew the power of the plant material and the flora of North America. And I also knew the profundity of the natural spaces, that we had a harshness and a ruggedness that really forged the pioneering spirit and gave a character to all of the people that were seeking a new life that came to North America, right? Whether immigrants or, moving from the east to the west coast, the gold rush, all of these things. Like, I recognized that there was something powerful there before I ever went to Japan. I wanted Mr. Kimura's technique. I wanted his knowledge. I wanted to know how he created the aesthetic, but I never intended to copy it, right? I always wanted to pursue the expression of our native environment and our native species with the highest level of bonsai acumen, backing that aesthetic pursuit. So when I came back, it was all about sort of distancing myself from the institutionalization of the traditional model, of a shape and form aesthetically in Japan that is very much a cultural byproduct more than it is a natural representation. And the roots of bonsai started in China as an art form called penjing, where people would go out into these far-flung spaces where we recognize our place as a very humble, soft-bodied organism on earth, and we feel this profundity, and we have that humility that we take from that, and to use these miniature trees to create that context, but to bring it home so that we don't forget those experiences, that we're able to hold on to that. We didn't, 700 AD, they don't have cell phones taking pictures of waterfalls in Yosemite, right? They're trying to create that moment. Right. And I wanted to stay true to that initial concept. But, post World War II in Japan, there was a necessity to hold on to that cultural identity. And I think that created the traditional model. And so all of a sudden, I'm institutionalized to this pressure of history and a really catastrophic event in World War II that happened, and the wrestling of how we preserve ourselves through our traditional art forms in Japan. And that was what I learned to a large degree in the aesthetic, even through Mr. Kimura, who's doing these radical things. He's still using the orthodox model or the traditional model of Japanese bonsai as a common kata, in karate, a common pose in yoga, right? It's like the reference that you continue to keep your blade sharp and honed, and then you deviate into these more sort of wild expressions where you start to tap into the profound experiences that trees have in these rugged environments. And through that, you're able to transport people.
Mhm.
You're able to create visions of these environments that's inferred through the context of the shape of this tree, right? So the quest in the United States of creating these landscapes really pushed me to go outside of anything that I'd ever seen anybody else do,
Mhm.
which started becoming hiking these stunted trees that had been, collected and were in boxes and were, strong again, hiking them back into the wild
Mhm.
and performing the styling process of these trees in context, uh, in a space where the species is growing in its most harsh and rugged habitat. And through that, I started developing, I already had a deep passion for the rugged landscapes of North America and for the flora of North America. But by putting myself in those situations, I started recognizing how valuable these ancient trees were because they are time capsules, right?
Mhm.
You see
Right.
a tree in a
Right.
landscape as a human being, you're only going to be able to experience if you live in that landscape and never leave, 80 to 90 to, if you're really optimized, 100-year lifespan of, we're talking millions of year old landscape. And this tree being, in the case of a bristlecone pine, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years, when you
Mhm.
look at that tree through its shape and form, where the deadwood exists, where the live vein exists, where the branches are blowing, the height of the tree, you can see 3,000 years of elements acting on that landmass in a moment. It is a story.
Yeah.
It is a time capsule.
Right.
And it's telling a tale that we will never understand ourselves without that organism existing there for that amount of time. It gives us a look into history that nothing else can provide us. And so through that, I started recognizing, wow, there needs to be a major conservation effort
Mm.
because at this point where things are radically changing climactically, uh, the ancient trees are the least malleable trees on the landscape,
Yeah.
which means their offspring, their seedlings are constantly genetically adapting, right? A seedling is always a little bit genetically different or sometimes very genetically different than the parent plant. And that is how trees perpetuate themselves. But these ancients that tell this story, these are at risk.
Mhm.
And we need to work to raise people's awareness, tell these stories, capture these trees before they're gone, and hopefully try and learn as much as we possibly can, which ultimately I've also come to understand is learning about ourselves and how we came to be who we are, right?
Right.
Because this
Right.
landmass creates a value system for the humans living on it, right? So what we wear, what we do, what we eat,
Mhm.
our identity is built by this landmass. And the most important organism on the landmass are these ancient trees.
And not to mention like the connection that we have to trees as we evolved. I mean, we came from a species. We literally evolved from a species that lived in the trees. I mean, trees are
Exactly.
so important to us. There's something
Exactly.
there's something that draws us to a tree. You see a
Yeah.
tree and it's just like, oh, you've got to go look at it. We want to study it. We want to see, because again, we just evolved for the importance of that tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been, that kind of, so I read an article like 10 or 12 years ago. I think it was the American Institute of Psychology or something
Uh-huh.
put this article out that said like 85% of all people's first memory is of a tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I frequently, when I'm working with like youth education, because we have a nonprofit called the One Tree Project that works towards conservation, but one of our big goals is youth education. When I'm working with youth and I have that first touch point with kids, I'll always have them draw a tree, and I don't give them a prompt. I just say, draw a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And some kids will draw, a ball on a stick, like a lollipop. Some kids will draw a triangle on a stick, like a pyramid or conifer. That reference of what is your tree is formed at a very, very young age
Mm-hmm.
and identifies directly with your immediate environment. And if you think about that, descendants of primates, the tree is home, but the tree is also safety.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that you would identify at a very young age with a tree and that it would form a significant memory because that is where you need to get to survive,
Right.
up in that tree, right? And the importance of trees on that identity and that memory and that sense of self is huge,
Mm-hmm.
huge. So then I had been aware with these projects in the wild and keeping track of ancient trees and this picture in Mr. Kimura's, hosting space at his garden for clients. I had been aware of the Puglian olives for a long time.
Yeah.
But I had heard about the blight of Xylella fastidiosa, which is a bacterium that's spread by psyllids feeding on the leaves, that clogs the vascular tissue of the olives. I had heard about it starting to eradicate the olives in Puglia. And I work in Italy frequently because there's a very thriving bonsai culture in Italy. And on one of those trips back in 2017, I was working down around Naples, and I just took a side trip over to Puglia to see the olives and to see what was happening with the olives. And I was just like absolutely flatlined by the olives because they were a tree that was 3,000 years old that had the same aesthetic of ancient that a lot of the bristlecone pines or, limber pines or ponderosa pines or junipers that are, the oldest living trees on the North American continent. They had that aesthetic, but they had been domestically cultivated the entire time. And this was like a crossing of very significant strands of DNA in my body of work that I was just completely shocked and awed by, because wind and snow and sun and drought and insects and disease and rockfall and whatever else shapes these trees. But the Puglian olives were shaped by humans, and I had it's obvious to me now, but I had never thought of humans being an equal strength and force of nature as a gale force wind.
And you were seeing the same characteristics, right? And both
same characteristics, same, if I had to define the aesthetic of ancient, a significant degree of asymmetry with a tremendous amount of remnants of what was in terms of branching and trunks being turned to deadwood over the decay of the tree through these erratic conditions, right? And a tremendous amount of negative space between the branching. And I try to isolate and quantify the aesthetics that I'm pursuing in these logical ways, because they help me see beyond my own bias when I'm styling trees. If I can lean back and say, have I pursued a greater degree of asymmetry beyond the norm?
Right.
Have I opened up the space, and have I left behind the remnants of what was? Like, those three things and the degree of those things push trees into ancient as an aesthetic. But there's a significantly greater number of characteristics that lead into it. The aesthetic representation of ancient. Those are the big broad brushstrokes. But I was seeing that in the Puglian olives, and yet these have been tended to for 3,000 years. And here's the other thing. They've been tended to for 3,000 years, but they started their decline in the past 15. So what happened for 3,000 years that these were growing so well, strong, robust, yes, experiencing the force of humans, nurturing, but also utilizing the olives, right?
Yeah.
What had happened for 3,000 years that made it work, and for the past 15 has caused a massive, and when I say a massive, we're talking not a complete die-off, but you're talking about a massive die-off of these ancient trees.
What percentage are you seeing?
I think that, there's varying figures, but I think that they have been hypothesizing that 80 to 90% of the Puglian olives will die.
Wow.
From Xylella. And so as a team here at Mirai, having had the experiences of done a handful of projects in the wild, we decided to go to Puglia and see if we could get to some greater degree of understanding and potentially even a root of cause and issue. Now, through this whole aesthetic journey that I've had over the past 15 years at Mirai, and the realizations I've come to, there's also a horticultural journey that I've been on.
Yeah.
Because the horticulture of bonsai is very challenging, growing a tree in the small container. The container controls the energy of the tree, and the technique distributes the energy throughout the tree. This is the art of bonsai. And then we use the aesthetic to represent that tree in miniature, but the aesthetic should make it look like a much larger tree in that miniature form, which is what takes you to these profound spaces contextually. The horticulture of things, in modern agronomy, and I've always used the Central Valley of California as a great illustration of this. It's like you had this tremendously fertile landmass from glacial byproduct coming out of the mountains, right, during the last ice age. And over the course of time, with a greater lean on industrial farming practices, we've completely nuked the soil, created a monocrop of, hard pan, high disease insect susceptibility based on our practices stripping the carbon backbone out of the soil
Right.
system.
Right.
And this is kind of universal. So the quality of what's grown there nutritionally is lower, the toxicity is higher, and the complications of growing it are greater in the modern agronomical process, which is post-World War II, capturing atmospheric nitrogen through the Haber methodology allowed us to deliver nitrogen in chemical forms, allowed us to, ultimately led us to deliver phosphorus in chemical forms. And with that came a lot of salt and a lot of metals and a lot of toxicity that makes disease and insect susceptibility astronomically higher. And bonsai was no different. Like when I was cultivating bonsai in Japan, we were proactively treating for pests and disease once a week through the majority of the growing season. And sometimes those chemicals were incredibly toxic, and so I'm seeing this abundance of use. And I didn't want to live my life that way.
Yeah.
I didn't want to spend every week applying hazardous chemicals.
Well, isn't that a
trees.
cascading effect too, right? The more you apply, the
more you apply, the worse it gets.
The worse it gets.
And the more you apply, the more the tree becomes a little bit of a slave to that.
Yeah.
Chemical maintenance, right? Because you're shutting down all your biologicals, you're dramatically altering the content of the soil, the content of the tissue in the tree. And it wasn't until I found Apical Ag Solutions and David Naus that I had the ability to actually understand this. But David is the closest figure I could compare him to is like Rain Man, right? Like he understands plants on a level that I've never met anybody like him.
Yeah.
And he developed a methodology to be able to extract the fluid out of the leaves of plants and to put them through a series of processes that gives you a full nutritional panel. And why that is revolutionary in horticulture and agronomy is that we've always been able to test the water, the soil, and the nutrition that we're applying. But what the plant actually took has always been a question mark. And when David broke that barrier, through his methodology, which he's one of 5 labs in the world that does this, but he's by far the most sophisticated lab. And he's the only person as a crop advisor that will supply you with the recommendations to correct the nutrient imbalances. But he basically was piggybacking on a lot of scientific papers over a long period of time, like centuries of time. He's looking back at old papers and written word about agronomy and regenerative agronomy. And he's putting all of that and synthesizing that into, these theories that he's then using his testing mechanisms and protocols to actually prove out and see if he's correct or not. And through that, he started to understand that nutrition inside of a plant is all about critical balance. It's not about how much of any one thing, it's about the proportions of one thing to another. For example, the calcium to magnesium ratio in plants is one of the most pivotal things that you can measure in a plant to understand whether that plant has the ability to grow with health or not. A majority of plants on planet Earth need a higher calcium content to magnesium content. And for our temperate conifers, we need about a 3-to-1 calcium to magnesium ratio for our temperate conifers to grow with optimized health. Optimized health does not mean unsustainable growth like we're getting through chemical inputs. It means it's growing at the rate of the tree in the best possible production of the highest yield of whether it's fruit or a food producing component, or whether it's for us, the foliage mass and the aesthetic development. We get tighter internodes, we get more ramification, we get more controlled growth. The tree is behaving at its optimized self, right? There's a calcium to phosphorus ratio, which are the 2 most important elements in plant growth, even though everybody leans on nitrogen. And then there's all of your trace elements. So he's optimizing this balance. And in doing so, I really came to a realization that when plants have a Xylella fastidiosa, like the olives, or a psyllid attack that's spreading this bacterium to the Puglian olives, the insect is actually, you can think about this several different ways, and this is a very new age way to think about it, but the insect is actually doing the plant a favor, which is hard to get to. But if the plant is filled with toxicity and it continues to get an input that's furthering that toxicity,
Yeah.
continuing to get an industrial nutritional input, and specifically ammoniacal nitrogen is very, very challenging. Salts are very, very challenging, and metals are very, very challenging. But when you get this constant input, the plant cannot choose to not take this in. It's part of the water and the soil. It's part of the ecosystem that it's existing in. Yet it can't dispose of these toxins unless it sheds its leaves or it sheds its root tips. And so oftentimes what a plant will do is a plant will put out a pheromone signal that draws in insects to feed on the gaseous buildup of ammoniacal nitrogen that causes spider mite outbreaks, or the high metal content, which is going to kill the plant vascularly, and the insect can feed on these things. And so we started, looking at this ecosystem inside of Mirai and recognizing that insects and disease are an indicator that something's wrong. And now we take the correct action to fix it, which is not hose it down with a chemical, but we adjust the water oxygen balance in the soil. We adjust the nutrient balance inside of the tree, and suddenly the insect and disease slowly over time become a non-issue. They just go away, And so we went to Puglia with that knowledge as well of let's go and see these olives, but do we have the ability with this knowledge horticulturally to be able to offer some kind of support and assistance? Because everybody from all corners of the world were trying to piggyback on this government-funded experiment to save the olives. And of course, what are they doing? They're making more chemicals to solve this problem, right?
Right.
Well, when you really dig down into the Puglian olive problem, the reason that it sprung up in the past 15 years is because you had post-World War II all of the creation of this ammonium phosphate or ammonium sulfate that's being applied to these olives as an industrial agronomical product. And over the course of time, they also started leaning on tillage, which was destroying the root tips, and then they're putting salt into the soil, which is really clogging the vascular system. And suddenly you have this tree that is impaired, and now the psyllids are attacking it, and the psyllids are transporting this bacterium and feeding on the olive. But in all actuality, the psyllids and everybody trying to kill the psyllids, and we're tilling them to take away the cover crop that houses the psyllids, is doing more damage. They're just making it worse and worse, And so we thought, well, it would be amazing if we could help. We're going to do this project. I want the aesthetic, outcome of experiencing these olives and all of this, time capsule information that's held in their aesthetic. But beyond that, I would love to be trying to help solve the problem of Xylella and being able to build up immunity and bring these olives back, because we've seen time and again that when you change the nutrient content of a tree, even in the macro environment, that it's a very quick recovery if people are open to it and are willing to attack it with the same intensity that pathogen is attacking the tree. But unfortunately in Puglia, we just hit such a massive roadblock of red tape and bureaucracy, and I would say corruption and politics, and the stronghold of industrial ag really kind of owning and ruling their fiefdom of the Puglian Peninsula, where a majority of these olives are being grown. And so it went from being this, heartfelt quest to try and offer a different perspective that has shown tremendous results in a lot of radical environments in North America where agronomy is failing, and they've been able to regenerate these places: citrus greening, dryland wheat farming, potato farming in Peru. Like David's his track record is tried, tested, and proven. And we just found that as outsiders, we were really fighting an uphill battle that ultimately started to get a little dangerous, a little scary.
Really?
And we recognized that there was really a lack of willingness to try something different.
But they're seeing all of this death. They're seeing,
and
they know that that's going to happen.
Correct.
But they're not willing to change their practices. I guess I'm confused as to why
they were not willing to change. Correct. Yeah, and I think here's the problem, Thomas. And I mean, we're discussing this subject matter on a podcast that's dealing with herbalism,
Mhm.
which for everybody that's listening here, unless they're like listening to this to try and amass all of the information that they're going to use to try and counter the benefits of herbalism and homeopathic cultivation.
Right.
They're listening and we've already drank the Kool-Aid,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Which, it's not Kool-Aid. It's the truth.
Mhm.
But, when you are institutionalized with the industrial ag methodology of having loaded up a tree with a tremendous amount of toxicity, having bypassed the tremendous amount of labor
Mhm.
and contact with the soil and boots on the ground that creating healthy food sustainably demands, right?
Yeah.
Being true farmers again, not a mechanized system.
Right.
But being true farmers where you know the plant, you handle the plant, you know the soil, you improve the soil, you know the ecosystem, you work very hard to
You're
not
in
jeopardize
love,
the
right? I
ecosystem.
feel like
you're in love.
Yeah, you're just completely in love with the plant, with the place, with the soil, all of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is, I think farming is a calling
Absolutely.
for a majority
sure.
of people, right?
Yeah.
When you have been institutionalized to fight all of what farming healthy food actually takes
Mhm.
and using these other vehicles, it is a very tough situation to change.
Yeah.
Because it's a change of culture.
Mhm.
And if you get into the roots of Puglian olives, they were not designed to be edible food. They were designed to be used to create oil that they used to keep the lanterns burning. That was the origin of the Puglian olives originally.
Mhm.
They came from, Albania. They came from Albania with the Mesapi tribe at a period of time in Albania where there was major unrest, which was happening consistently, 3,000 years ago. The Puglian olives came across the waterway, landed in Puglia, and they started cultivating these olives. And ultimately, the Roman Empire pulled Puglia into the Roman Empire and more or less made it a part of the Roman Empire. But the Mesapi tribe is really the beginning of the Puglian olives, and the utility of the olive oil was more for the purpose of keeping the lights on than it was for edible food crops. But what's happened over the course of time is that value system of the olives being utilized for an industrial practice meant that the price of those olives was quite low, especially as olive production in Spain,
Mhm.
Portugal has ramped up, and the growers in Puglia wanted to try and have been trying for a long time to create a higher level of olive that is very much comparable and maybe even at the boutique level of edible olives and high level olive oil. And so that transition, when you have a utilitarian industrial use for the crop, that goes hand in hand with the mentality of utilizing these more, I would say, heavy-handed sledgehammer-like approaches to the agronomical pursuit of cultivation. And in Puglia, there's a saying that when you put your hand out, the olive tree gives it. Whatever you put your hand out for, it gives it. And so there was this history of the olives giving and giving and giving, regardless of what happened to them. But over the past 10 to 15 years, they've hit their threshold and tolerance of what's being given to them. And now they can't give it back.
Was there a change that took place, let's say 20 years ago, that has caused this? Or is this a change that has taken place over the last 100 years as far as agricultural shift? And
Yeah. I want to be super careful because I'm not a historian. So we did our very best as a team with translators that we really trusted. We had a group of translators that were very passionate about this project. We had a masseria, which is a place where they process the olives. So when you harvest olives, they need to be pressed within a very short period of time.
Right.
So this masseria, we worked with them and their olives there for the project, as well as, started to open conversations about this regenerative agronomical approach that we thought could give their olives some immunity to the Xylella bacterium. But I think the big change was World War II. And the Haber method creating the ability to utilize atmospheric nitrogen to create fertilizers that facilitate unsustainable growth. Now, inside of this is the double-edged sword of modern farming practices. We are growing more food on a smaller plot of land than ever before in the history of mankind, right? And with the harnessing of atmospheric nitrogen, we've been able to feed populations of people with less effort that has allowed for the proliferation and expansion of humanity in a very positive way.
Mm-hmm.
If you consider, nourishment and population being a response to availability of resources
Sure.
and primarily nutrition, right? But and this is where I sort of get side railed, is like, that is all good and and should not be demonized for sure. But what we are learning now, right, as an organism, is that the practices that allowed us to achieve that are also the practices that have kind of driven the harvestable crops and the format of agronomy into a space where a majority of humans, 80% of the food on a shelf in a grocery store has glyphosate in it, and where there are a lot of health issues related directly to nutrition and the consumption of what's being grown, because the nutrition isn't there, or there are a lot of other things in that edible crop that shouldn't be there, that our body's having a hard time dealing with.
Yeah.
And so where is the trade-off in the value system of feeding people, but having that food be of a less and less quality, or potentially having, having, what do they say on like the medicine commercial, having side effects, right? To this radical agronomy that's growing so much food in such a small plot of land. And it's like, is there a balance here? Is the answer to go backwards? And in going backwards, what does that mean for the state of humanity?
But isn't that just humans though? I mean, we're all about short-term success, right? I mean, that's just.
I would like to think we're better than that, but I don't know. It's like my reference is only what we're doing now, and 5 generations prior, they were talking about the next generation being, all those kids their hair is bad, their music sucks, like the world's going to hell in a handbasket. I think that's been a common dialogue for humanity for a long time. I think where we're at now, we're so much more aware. I'm not going to say we're the most aware or sophisticated in the history of humankind. I think there's a lot of debate about the history of humankind right now, as technology has shown the presence of populations that maybe we didn't know existed prior to, all of these theories of occupation and hunter-gatherers turning to sustainable farming communities. But like, it is one of these grand questions that faces the future generations of how do we grow healthy food for ourselves? Right. How do we fend off the byproduct or the side effect of what we've done to this point? And how do we hopefully sustain, planet Earth and those practices and the plant communities that we depend on?
Right.
In what does seem to need to be, from my perspective, a necessary shift. Yeah.
Well,
I just watched Interstellar last night, which is just a film that hammers this home.
One of the best films of the last decade.
Yeah,
it's really,
absolutely,
really tremendous. But I thought of the Don't Look Up film when you were talking, about the red tape that you ran into when you were there. And it's just like, well, this is all, I'm sorry, but this is just the way it is. And yeah, the trees are going to die, but we can't change.
Right. Or to save them, it may require a lot of work, and it's like, but there's been 3,000 years of work put into these trees.
Right.
Like, are you really serious that we're not going to do that? But then you're looking at Puglia. And when I go to Puglia, I was telling the team when we were there, because we drove the whole peninsula, north to south, east to west. I mean, I've been there five times now in this project. I've been there with David. I've been there on my own several times. I've been there with the team to film. I really love that landmass, and it to me, it looks like the poster child for regenerative agronomy, creating a sustainable economy, which I don't think a lot of people correlate regenerative agronomy to a sustainable economy. But Puglia is a depressed place. There's some beautiful historical mausoleas and towns, and an idyllic life that's reflected through a few places, but the majority of it is abandoned olive factories and dead orchards, and it just looks like the earth is scorched. The trees are literally, they look, like they're black in a lot of the orchards where they've been dead for a while, or they're, dying. And that's not to paint such a grim picture that there aren't fantastic 3,000-year-old olives that are still thriving. That exists, right? In Ostuni, the White City, kind of in the middle of the peninsula has been like the boundary line of the Xylella progression. The southern tip, where it's the hottest and the driest, has experienced the most massive die-off, and it's kind of moved up the peninsula towards the mainland. They've found Xylella has spread all over. They thought they had it contained, and it is not contained. There have been reports that Xylella is in Portugal, that Xylella is in Spain, and the olive production there. I don't know whether that's true or not. I've also heard that they're discounting Xylella as the problem at all, and that they're equating the die-off to a completely different pathogen now, which, if you've been there and you've seen it act and you've seen it behave and you've looked at the agronomical practices, that to me sounds like a little bit more of like human intervention, political issue than anything else. But again, I want to be careful because we really, when we were stonewalled from kind of going any further, and we recognized that we were playing with forces that were far more powerful and willing to do things that, we were not, obviously, in terms of the power of modern agronomy. In fact, industrial agronomy, like the financial interest is huge in that. And that starts to get real wonky real quick when you're trying to disrupt that. We just recognize that the best thing we could do is identify some of the problems, can hopefully continue to work towards solutions that empower people to utilize regenerative agronomy in any practice, horticulturally or agronomically, and continue to understand it better and better ourselves, with the hope that we can distribute that knowledge in a way that is positive and brings about some sort of change, however small or large.
Are you seeing any trees that you think are just naturally have adapted to be resistant to this, or is it a pretty...
Yes. I mean, there's always going to be a select genetic population of trees that have, as the seedling offspring, mutations occur. And in Italy, a lot of people are planting a few different varieties that they identify as being resistant to Xylella. And again, that's awesome. And the olive trade and industry is going to continue to adapt and find those resistant cultivars, which, will they be resistant for forever? Will the threshold continue to be pushed until they are no longer resistant if we continue these practices? Probably. That's my hypothesis. But again, this is not my area of expertise. I just got into this through caring for the ancients, but still the ancients are the ones that are going to go, and those are the ones that hold all the history and value to societal interests,
Well, and another thing that, I think that's interesting is that we're seeing this, here as well, right? Where we're seeing this with big ag and what they're doing. And you kind of hit on this, and now we have sort of this regenerative movement. Obviously we've had the organic movement for some time. But it's still such a small part of agriculture. It's just a tiny, tiny little bit in the whole, world of agriculture is organic, or regenerative organic is even smaller at this point. But there are people like you that are out there, and they're saying, there's a different way, and we can do this differently, and we can make this, we can make this work out for everyone, including the planet. Do you feel that you're seeing that a little bit more in the movement? Are you? And again, I know you're not the expert as far as...
I have to be, I have to be really careful to not talk outside of my area of expertise, which, again, like, I just went far and wide. So maybe for the listeners, it will help everybody to sort of understand why this bonsai guy was in Puglia trying to save the Puglian olives. And I've given you sort of the aesthetic value of the ancient trees, but also bonsai for me is a lifestyle. It's not a hobby. It's not a passion. It's not a practice. It's a way of life. And it's always, since I found it at 12 years old, when I saw those people buying those trees at the county fair, and I rode my bike to the library and checked out all the books, and I saw the magazine with my master's work a month later and said, I'm going to study with him. And I set the course for my life, and I followed that path. Bonsai has always been this peephole into the world at large, the greater world, right? It's a lens of viewing things that allows me to understand all of these greater concepts and to reconcile them in this compact form. And I think that's really where the value of bonsai is it offers you this unobtainable perspective of an ancient tree and a giant tree in a miniature form where you can finally, for the first time, take it all in and digest the complexity and the profundity of this massive organism. But it's been impossible for me to be caring for our trees here and to be going to these landscapes, seeking that inspiration and not develop a significant passion.
Yeah.
And it's also been impossible to look at trees in the native landscape and not think that there are ways that bonsai can foster and facilitate some sort of health and recovery and sustainability. If it can't, then it's a vanity-based art form. And it has so much more to offer than that, and I know it. And that's really what pushed me into the science, and that's really what pushed me to taking the science.
Right.
And I've always said I think bonsai can save the world, and I really mean it. Because once you have your first bonsai tree, the amount your awareness is elevated by what is necessary to steward that tree,
right,
and how much of this world is covered by trees that are these fascinating things. I think everybody needs that level of awareness.
Yeah.
You know, but like it has really pushed me to try and do something with the skills and knowledge that I both obtained in my apprenticeship, but really ultimately since coming back, the skills and knowledge I've had to obtain to be able to adapt to the changing conditions and environment for the native species that we utilize in the bonsai pursuit, to empower them to be their best capable living selves in this confined environment without leaning on unsustainable practices.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately sort of where it all ties together for me, because I am, and interestingly through the Puglian Olives project, as we were talking with researchers from the university outside of Ostuni, you know, I was described as an artist, and David was there as the scientist. And nobody, I didn't need them to care what I say, because it was about having David there trying to figure out this agronomical conundrum, right? But I don't carry like the clout or the weight to like have somebody really listen to what I'm saying.
Right.
But what's been beautiful is that David has respected what I'm saying and able to do here at Mirai with his methodology. And I was really kind of the first client of his that took it out of the agronomical direction of like big crop application, and I put it into the horticultural endeavor of containerized nutrition. And so when you ask me, am I seeing it change? I'm seeing a lot of students leaning on the apical system.
Yeah.
You know, through Mirai,
Right.
which means that they're moving away from chemicals, that they're seeing their trees behave differently. And for me, I am more aware of how a plant can grow, should grow, what it takes for a plant to grow in that way. And we've been wild testing a lot of the ancients in the spaces that we go to and looking at their nutrient panels. And one of the most profound things that I've realized is when you see a tree that achieves 4,000, 5,000 years of age and you test its internal content, there's almost perfect balance. That is why it is 5,000 years old. And I mean, to the degree that we were in the Sierras, and I did a scope of work in front of like I'm guessing it's a 3,500 to 4,000 year old Sierra juniper. And we tested the foliage, which, you know, it takes a small amount, just so everybody knows, it takes a very small amount of foliage to test through David's methodology. Take a little small nip of foliage off of this tree. And it's trace elements. It's iron, it's cobalt, it's zinc, it's manganese, it's molybdenum, it's boron. We're perfection. I've never seen it on a single cultivated plant before, but yet that plant in the wild sitting on this granite perch in the Sierras that's been there for thousands of years. Perfect balance. It was unbelievable.
Well, I think you said something earlier when you're talking about bonsai, and I think that it was a realization for me was I had no idea how hard nature had to work to keep something alive. It's incredible. Like, because you're kind of replicating that a little bit, right? You're adding the water, you're putting the nutrients in, you're taking care of what nature just does on its own. And it's a tremendous amount of work every day.
Yes.
And nature's just doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, the bonsai process, I think largely people focus on the aesthetics and the technical aspect of it. And when we had sort of a one size fits all fertilizer that had a, NPK ratio that was balanced, and we put it on it every month, for the first 3 or 4 years of Mirai, that worked just fine. But then in the 4th year, I'm giving this constant input of all of these things on a consistent application. And the trees started to accumulate things that they didn't want. And they wanted more of things that they didn't have.
Yeah.
And that's when I started seeing the problem that led me down this rabbit hole of how do I grow these trees, giving them what they want and what they need, and not giving them what they don't want and they don't need. And in doing so, can I eliminate chemical inputs by doing this? And ultimately that was motivated by a very innocent, he's now 11, but at that time I had a 3-year-old son in the garden, and I've got a bunch of rocks that hold water in them. And if I'm spraying chemicals all the time, that water has chemicals, and he's sitting there in his diapers, wading around in the water. I didn't want that to be his reality. I didn't want to see the pollinators continue to decline.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't want to see the birds leave. I didn't want to see the reptiles leave. I didn't want to lose the monarchs. I didn't want to lose the honeybees. And one of the biggest things about the apical system, and let's just focus on regenerative agronomy, the regenerative agronomical approach in the garden, is that the ecosystem around me of the garden has taken such a step up in its sustainability that we see things in this garden that people don't typically see in Oregon, period. As a result of the environment that has been created by this approach to cultivating our trees. And that is all the proof I need. That's all the proof I need.
Right. Well, it's really funny. So I started watching you, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. And I started watching, obviously, because I wanted to learn more about bonsai, and I really wanted to learn more about technique and things. But what I was most impressed with was not only your skills, and I do want to go back to, you said something that you do bonsai for a living. It's like Rembrandt saying, well, I just paint for a living. It's
right.
It's a little different than that. I think you're And for those listening, you have to check out the Mirai bonsai site and just look at those. It's unbelievable, like what you're able to do. But what I was so impressed with, and what I really went down rabbit holes, even more than just the styling techniques or, your approach to the aesthetics, was your horticultural skill. How to keep these things alive, because it's so important. I mean, you can have the most beautiful specimen tree, and if you can't keep it alive, well, then it's just nothing but, firewood, right? I mean, that's the case.
Yes, the horticulture of things. And this was really like where I recognized how difficult it is going to be to change the current approach to raising food crops. Because when we changed our approach from putting on fertilizer once a month, factory made fertilizer in a totally conveniently usable form with all of the things that modern science says a plant needs, which that also is in flux right now. What science actually thinks plants needs versus what they actually need, and then managing problems through chemical application. I really, horticulture was a low lift, and it worked until it didn't work, but it stopped working very quickly for me. Right within the first 4 years, it stopped working. So then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we need to do something different, and doing something different meant that I had to try harder. And when I had to try harder, it meant that the horticulture started taking up more and more of my time, which a lot of people would look at and say, well, that's bad. But I found as horticulture started taking more and more of my time, my work on the trees got better and better. My awareness of the natural ecosystem became more and more acute and in tune. And all of a sudden, things that I was not able to do technically, I'm accomplishing via the horticulture of it. I'm seeing plants grow in a way that other people are not getting their plants to grow. I'm able to do things with plants that other people cannot do, because horticulture then became one of the many branches of bonsai that, in dedicating myself to it, was empowering a higher level. And the whole goal of Mirai from the very beginning was to pursue bonsai at the highest possible level. That's what I was educated with. That's what my ambition was when I went and sought my apprenticeship. It's how my master conducted himself. And I would say that the landmass in the context of North America has never been accurately represented with bonsai. But I think more than that, recognizing that this landmass has the largest, has the tallest, and has the most ancient tree on earth on it, tells me that there is a story that needs to be told here that's incredibly important. And bonsai is my way of telling that story. To think that I can do that without respecting the cultivation strategies of the tree is one of the great, I think, pieces of misinformation or components of arrogance in the modern world that humans have missed in the process of cultivating plants.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it does take effort. It does. If you're going to do this, it takes a lot of effort.
Tremendous.
And that is time well spent. And if there isn't a monetary return for it, there will be a soulful growth as a human component of it that outweighs the monetary component every single time. To be a better person, everybody has the goal of being happier, more fulfilled, leading a better life.
Yeah.
How do you do that, right? And the pursuit of that is kind of what throws a lot of us off. I have found it through improving my horticulture. Like, I have found a tremendous amount of satisfaction and relief of the quest, if you will, in caring for these plants in a way that brings them to their ultimate potential. Yeah. And I never envisioned that was going to be something that happened.
Right. Wow. Well, I'm so happy that you did.
I'm happy that you found me, because I'm so sorry, Thomas. Give me one
You're
second.
Totally fine.
Hello? Speaking of agronomy, that was the delivery of some apple trees. So I was gosh, they keep calling me. Yeah.
Are you planting them around the garden, or are you gonna?
Yeah. So I mean, we're growing. Like, when I drench the garden with this nutrition, which is like calibrated to balance the internal contents of the plants, I have a lot. Sometimes I have leftover product, and so we've been putting it on our vegetable garden, and I've been putting it on the landscape. And what I've had a vegetable garden for 15 years at Mirai, but I've never had vegetables the quality that we have now. Yeah, and I've had a lot of landscape plants that do or don't thrive in the clay soil profile in the Pacific Northwest. And in dumping the dregs, it's a fairly inaccurate system. Like, I could test these landscape trees, or I could test the vegetables and get specific recs to be able to cultivate them in a more sustainable way, or in a more customized way. But I find just like using the dregs of the drench solution that I'm putting on my trees, when I put it on the landscape, it sort of takes care of it, And this kind of goes back to what you were asking about, which is, are there resistant varieties and resistant cultivars? When we were getting into this whole discussion of sustainable nutrition and regenerative agronomy, I started with Dr. Elaine Ingham's soil food web methodology, which, Paul Stamets has weighed in on that. And there's a lot of people that refer to the soil food web and the power of the root rhizosphere right at the root tip to adjust the soil conditions to what the plant wants and needs. That's a very magical superpower that plants have at the root tip and the rhizosphere. And so some of the adaptation, I think, that maybe we would see in the olives or any other embattled crops or, landscapes across the world will come from the rhizosphere adjusting things to a sustainable condition for the root to be able to obtain what it needs. Yeah. And we should never, I think it's totally arrogant to look at the native environment as needing us and needing our artificial input, right?
Well, that is the hubris of humankind, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I think we've gotten to a point where some of those landscapes through the inputs continue to be pushed into a position where that superpower cannot compensate. It's like kryptonite for Superman, right? It's like disempowering the superpower of the root rhizosphere. Anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, this was fantastic. I mean, this is one of the most informative discussions I've had in a very, very long time on here. It's just really, really incredible. I think the people listening, I was constantly, as you were talking, was thinking about the fact that there's this connective thread that is Herbal Radio, and that everyone sort of talks about on here, or they directly talk about, which is the power of plants and the power plants have on us. And it's so exciting to get to talk to you, because it's a different, you've taken such a different approach to that power of plants, because there's an aestheticness to plants as well. And we don't think about that a lot, but you do. That's your focus, is like, there's this aesthetic quality to these trees, and you're bringing that out, and it's just absolutely incredible what you're able to do.
I appreciate that.
Man,
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. It has been, it's really been life-changing for me. Just get to hang out with you and come to the garden and see what you do. It's so inspirational. And then on top of it, projects, that you're also involved in, just like the Olive Project. This is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think we aspire to continue these projects. There's a lot of landscapes that have a lot of value that are lowly known. We're actually headed to Great Basin National Park.
Yeah, I was talking earlier about that. That sounds incredible. That sounds like
that one should be a big one. Yeah, we'll be going to the most remote, secluded grove of bristlecone pines in the country, and
wow.
I don't really have an idea of even what it looks like, because not many people have been there to even photograph it, let alone capture it. And we're going to be going with Brian Smithers, who's a leading researcher in the bristlecone pines right now. So we're going to get a lot of knowledge. I'm going to come back probably fully psyched and stocked and horribly sunburned, but I'm into it.
And your podcast with him was just phenomenal.
He's an amazing wealth of knowledge, and a really quality human being at that. So those are kind of the intangibles that lead to, I think, positive information that facilitates really positive change. Yeah.
And I do want to talk just a second about your videos that you have on Mirai, for those listening out there that are interested in bonsai. You just want to check it out. If you just, have some questions, you cover everything in Mirai. You've given all your knowledge away, which is, I don't know too many artists that actually do that.
I think when I came back from Japan, I recognized that the impediment to bonsai evolving into a more powerful medium was impaired by the secrecy of the techniques in Japan. And, I had to go by a very, very rigorous 6-year apprenticeship with my master. I would not change it for the world, but I could not do it again. And when I came back, what I really wanted to see in North America is I wanted to see bonsai pursued as an art form. But you know very well, Thomas, that to be an artist, you have to have a mastery of technique. You have to produce a prolific body of work, and you have to have something to say.
Yeah.
And Mirai, the Mirai Academy, Mirai Live, which is the online video library, and then Mirai Mobile, which is the app that helps you understand what to do with your trees when, was really my way of democratizing the knowledge, so that it wasn't so secret, and you didn't have to go sit with, in a rigorous apprenticeship for 6 years to be able to access bonsai and have success. And I think it really opened the door for people that have a lot to say and a lot to offer through their artistic input and their perceptions and their creativity, have a lot to offer the world with the medium of tiny trees. It gave them the vehicle to realize their visions and that aesthetic outcome that I think, has provided so much value for me and continues to create that time capsule like story that the tree can tell.
Yeah.
And so it's been quite a journey that ultimately, when you think about when we started live streaming in 2017, we were dependably live streaming as a 5-person team before Facebook or Instagram or any other company was dependably live streaming as a several thousand person team,
Right.
and we really put a lot of ourselves into it. It was a project that will continue to exist, and a project that I feel like we touched a lot of the bases, and there's still more to touch, but we sort of reached our point where we felt like we had done what we needed to do to give people the ability to pursue this art form at a high level. And if people want a taste of it, they can just look at our YouTube channel, Bonsai Mirai, and get a taste of it. But if they really want to go deep, we'll teach you how to make a tree from start to finish and everything in between. Live.bonsaimirai.com, or look up Mirai Mobile on the App Store, and you'll be able to enter the portal. You'll be a better person for it.
You will. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even if you're not, if you're not necessarily going to pursue bonsai, just what you teach, as far as art, your approach to art, your approach to design, your approach to horticulture, your approach to, the plant itself. I mean, everything that's in there is just tremendous amount of knowledge. And, and you're going to walk away from every single video, and I guarantee you're going to learn something completely new. It's incredible.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That means we did what we set out to do then, and it took a lot to do that.
Well, it shows in the quality. It shows in in what you're able to produce. You weren't half-assing any of that. It's very
no. And you know what? All of this, I got to give credit to the team here at Mirai. I mean, I'm surrounded by like-minded individuals that are excellent at what they do and highly motivated to leave the world better than we found it. And that has given me momentum and energy when I haven't had it myself. And the team here continues to push the boundaries and push the envelope. And I'm really excited for the future. I think when I talk with a lot of experts about the state of the natural environment, the state of the landscape, the state of agronomy, all these things, it's like a doomsday deluxe. And I'm always looking for that key nugget that I can walk away feeling good about. I really think that we are on the cusp of changes for the better, and we had to accumulate the knowledge of what not to do to start to do it in a way that that creates a better world for ourselves and the next generation. And there's going to be a lot of growing pains in that process, but I am firmly rooted at this point in the mentality, and I believe this sincerely, that things are going to start changing for the better and are in process right now. And that optimism goes so far towards keeping us in the fight and continuing to work towards positive change that improves the state of our living environment and our food sources and the world that we create for our kids. Yeah.
That's so well said.
Yeah. Onwards and upwards, man.
Thank you very much. And I do want to plug that Mountain Rose Herbs. So we have a new olive oil coming out. It's a premium olive oil, and that we will be donating a percentage of the profits to your One Tree project. So
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So we're super excited
really cool.
about that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, we're excited about what you're doing. And obviously you're a plant lover just like us. And as plant lovers, we gotta stick together.
We gotta stay together. Yeah, that's
exactly.
Right. We gotta support each other. Oh, Thomas, that's very, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity and what you guys are doing as well. It's really been insightful to start to learn more about. I mean, I know you as an artist, but this whole side of your passion and pursuit is another little window that I've gotten to take a peek into that I admire and I'm really feel fortunate to have been introduced to. So I wish you guys all the best. You and I will continue to have an ongoing dialogue.
Absolutely.
But to all the listeners, thanks for listening to what we had to say, and hopefully something here resonates.
I think it will. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Thomas.